Welcome to Mobile Rolling. We're in the offices of Harness Racing SA, and with me is the racing's operation manager, David Thuen. Hey, welcome to Mobile Rolling.
Thank you, Jim. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you with us. I know David's rung me up week by week saying, I want to be on Mobile Rolling, get me on there, please, can you? You know, so he's finally got his way. But David, before we talk about, what we want to talk about is the national rating system and the changes that are happening here in South Australia. But before we do that, we want to talk about you, because a lot of people may not realise that you're actually from a harness racing background. So tell us where you started in harness racing and what the avenue got you involved in harness racing.
Yeah, well, Jim, my first earliest memories in life was around harness racing at my grandparents' property. And when I was about 12, I got into the pony racing and developed from there, and then went into the senior ranks and training and driving, and yeah, it all fell from there.
I think you're the right person for the racing operations manager job, because you understand what's involved to all the work behind to get a horse to a racetrack and prepare it and get it ready. I mean, but let's talk about your background. I mean, your grandfather, Jimmy Tucker, I mean, he had some really good horses. Do you remember some of his best horses when you were a young man?
The one that sticks out for me is Cardinal Owl. He won many races for my grandfather and then for Ross Sugars. I think his major win was he won the Vet Surgeons Cup.
Yep.
And I think he ran a fifth, I think, in the SA Cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a good horse. He had many other good horses through the Wavell days, but that was a little bit before my time.
Yeah, you're only a young guy, not grey hair like me, or no hair. Now, what about yourself? I mean, I remember you calling through the pony ranks. I reckon from memory your pony initially was Dynamite, and then I don't know if you had more ponies after that. But anyway, you got involved into driving and training harness racing. Now, you don't do that anymore, and if you don't mind me pointing out, it was due to an accident that you had. Was it at the Gawler Trials one night?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yes, at the Gawler Trials one night, just come out the gate and was driving a young horse, and unfortunately it didn't handle the first turn, and came down, and I was drawing barrier one, so the majority of the field went over the top, and I sustained significant injuries to my shoulder.
Yep.
And that ended my career as a harness racing participant.
Yeah, that's right. I was being involved training and driving and so forth. Look, it did make you incapacitated. You do have a percentage of disability, I suppose, from that accident as well, and that's why you can't muck around with the horses anymore. Yeah,
that's right. I basically I don't really have the use of my shoulder as such. It basically, the function of my shoulder is to keep my arm on. Yep. It doesn't actually move in the normal way that a shoulder should.
Okay.
But I can do the vast majority of things fine now.
Yep.
I just don't have a lot of strength in it or movement.
Yeah. Now, as far as training and driving is concerned, you had some pretty good success with some of our feature races. I mean, what were some of the great memories for you?
I was lucky enough at the age of 19 to drive a Southern Cross final for my grandfather.
Yeah.
That was the highlight of my driving career, doing it for him.
Big thrill for the whole family, getting it home, and only 19 too.
Yeah, so that was good. And I had a couple of other Southern Cross successes for Jill Nielsen.
Yeah.
And a Bottra Pace for her as well. So yeah, they're probably the...
Do you remember those horses?
The Bottra Pace was Muchas Gracias.
Yeah.
And Left Them for Dead. She won the 3-year-old and 4-year-old Southern Cross.
Yeah. Kapunda Cup rings a bell to me as well. Was one of your major races, feature races?
Yeah, that was one of my last winners as a driver, was the Kapunda Cup on Mythical Beast for Greg Norman.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was, I suppose Kapunda was the closest track to where I was situated, so that was like my local cup. So that was good.
Yeah. So good times?
Oh, certainly, yes. Yeah.
Any other major memories out of the trots to spring to mind?
Oh, your first winner.
Yeah.
My first winner, yeah, because that was for my grandfather, and my father was the owner, so yeah, that was pretty special. My second drive. It was also my first suspension.
Well, you didn't get many of those because I mean you were a driver that was very conservative out there, and you always saved something for your horse for the finish. I mean, you always rarely did you go home and you slaughtered a horse for an owner. You'd try and take the cheap way home and then get up late, which you had a great knack of doing that. I mean, one time I was doing stats and you had the biggest strike rate when barrier 6 was our widest barrier back in the days when you were driving. You had the best strike rate out of any driver winning from barrier 6, and that's because you used a bit of nous and found the right pattern. So I think people should realise that you were pretty skilled in that area, that you could do that. But as far as being out there, do you miss it?
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah, I miss it. I miss it greatly. Yeah. But I'm comfortable where I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're still helping the industry.
Yeah.
You enjoy that part of it?
Yeah. That's just being involved and trying to do what I can to help this industry keep surviving and thriving. Yeah.
All right. Well, he's proven himself as a family man. He's driven plenty of winners of major importance for family, so he's looking after the harness racing family. Now, David, over the years, you would have seen when you were training, when you had to nominate horses, you'd seen class changes like, from 28 fronts to C fronts, and now we've got the new national rating system, which is new again, and probably, in my opinion, the most complicated that I've seen in all the years I've been involved with harness racing. Do you remember when this national rating system was introduced?
Yeah, the first races were conducted in July 2019.
Yep.
That was when all the horses transitioned across from the previous class-based system to the national ratings based system.
Yep.
And so that's been in place for a little over 12 months now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Harness Racing SA just recently announced you're doing something a little bit different here in South Australia to make it work better. So can you tell us about that?
Yes. So we after the 12 months of the ratings being in, we conducted a review of the system and how it was working in South Australia. We had a forum with a number of leading trainers and drivers.
Yeah.
And the outcome from that was that in South Australia, we're a little different to the other states in the sense that because the prize money levels we race for, you don't accrue as many points as some of the other states.
Yep.
So we found that the ratings, the horses were reducing, the average of the horses was reducing.
Okay.
And the big concern or query with participants was the starting point for juveniles, 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, and also older horses just commencing their career, and ones that have just sort of won one or two races, where they were fitting into the system as opposed to where the general population of the horses who have been racing for many seasoned horses were. And it was found that, in everyone's opinion, that that level that they were entry level was too high in reference to the remainder of the racing population. Yeah,
as an outsider looking in for that, I mean, I tend to have that same opinion. Like it just showed like a 3-year-old might come in as a 50 rating.
That's correct, yes.
And then they might win 2 or 3 races, and then all of a sudden they're nearly up against the fast class. So you wouldn't really get that opportunity to have. In our days, as young men, we'd see horses that have picket fence form, that win 7, 8, 9 in a row. It just seemed like the national rating system was stopping that unless you had an absolute superstar horse.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the national concept in creating this system, is to increase the longevity of those other horses that have been battling around for a while. And it has worked for them, but it seems in SA in particular, it's come at the expense of the horses coming through. And so, so we did lobby to Harness Racing Australia to change this nationally. Weren't successful, so we've decided to introduce a local rule, and initially for a 2-month period, but we'll review it at the end of the 2 months, and if everything's positive, we'll keep going on with it or tweak it slightly, or
So what are some of the things that are you going to introduce that you think will make the difference, and how's it going to work?
So all 3-year-old horses which turn 3, so when they commence their 3-year-old season or older, if they haven't raced until they're 4 or 5.
Yep.
They'll be giving whatever the national rating is allotted to them, which is 50 for the horses who haven't raced, a 10-point reduction in their rating.
Okay.
And then it'll be scaled down that once you've won one race, 9 points, 8 points down to currently, if you've had 9 wins, once you've turned 3, a 1 point reduction in the rating. Because we did introduce some like maidens and 2-win races and those to first try and alleviate it.
Yep.
But what we found then was those horses were competing against other horses that have only had 0, 1, 2 lifetime wins, and then they were coming out of that system and they were being rated in the mid to high 50s, and like you said, then they're basically thrown to the wolves as such and competing against horses that have won 10, 15
over
races.
100,000 prize money.
Yeah. And the general consensus has been that the encouragement for getting a juvenile or a new horse into the system wasn't there, which it was previously.
Yep.
And the concern was that in the future, with the amount of young horses and that coming through would diminish. So this is our effort to increase that and to reward the people with the young horses.
Yeah, good idea, because I could see that, in my opinion, from an outsider looking in, it was going to be detrimental to the breeding industry, because if people can't get young horses that can win money fairly quickly or easily, then it's a hard job for stud masters and breeders as it is already. That would make it even harder. So hats off to you guys for doing something proactive there.
Yeah, that's the overriding aim of this ratings concession local rule that we've brought in. Yeah.
All right, so you're giving us that description as an example. Is there any other examples that spring to mind that will be the difference of this new lot introduced?
Yeah, so if any 2-year-old competes in a open age ratings race, they'll get a 10-point concession.
Okay.
Capped obviously at 30, because that's the minimum lowest a horse can get rated to.
Sure.
And then also any horse when it turns 3, whatever national rating is allotted to it when it turns 3, will receive a 10-point reduction, and then as they go through. So, for example, if a 2-year-old finished its season and won a significant number of races and was given a national rating of say 54, under the national system, when it commenced its 3-year-old season, would have to start racing in those 54 type races. So we'll give it a 10-point concession so it can start racing at 44.
44, yeah.
There is a cap on any concession that we give, that we don't bring a horse below 40.
Okay.
So if a horse, for example, is a 44 and it's only one race, it won't come down to 35, say. It will come down to 40.
Okay.
So we felt that was necessary to protect those maidens again. That's where a maiden comes in at 40.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to bring anyone in that come in below the maiden status.
Okay. So what we'll have, like when we get the fields out, usually we'll have a national rating, and then in brackets you'll have a South Australia rating type of thing. Is that what will happen when the fields come out?
Currently that isn't the case, Jim.
Yeah.
We are working with Rise about developing a system which would be similar, like you say, if it was a driver concession or a mare's concession, where it has the adjusted rating.
Yep.
And we'll have the adjusted rating next to the horse, so it's self-explanatory.
Sure.
But currently, that's a system that's Rise are saying it's going to take a amount of time to develop that in the system. So currently we're doing everything manually.
Yep.
So
you something else to do.
Yeah, got plenty of spare time.
So you've got to do that manually yourself.
Yeah,
so it's more work for you guys, even though you're trying to help out the industry.
Yeah. And also for the trainers themselves, if they go on to the harness web and look at their horse, the rating that's on their rating is actually the national rating, not the rating that with our local rating.
Yep.
So they just have to look at and see how many races their horses won since it's turned 3, and calculate that. And it may be that a race they enter for, when they go to enter for, it will say that they're not eligible, but just nominate for that race, and you'll work it out. And if they're eligible, we'll leave it in the field.
All right. So if you get this deduction of South Australia racing 10 points or whatever the number is, 10 numbers down, they can't also get a mayor's concession or a junior driver concession, or they can?
Yes, they can get it in the races where mayor's concessions or drivers are permitted. Yeah, which we tend to in the lower grade races. We don't allow a mayor or a driver concession to get into the race, but on occasions to give advantage in the barrier draw, we allow that. So any time if the race is with mayor's or drivers concessions, that can be on top of their ratings relief.
Okay. So with this new concession total, like the 10 points you're talking about, this is purely and simply for South Australian racing. You can't go interstate, and when you go interstate, you'll be the national rating, not the adjusted rating that you make it.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah, that's only for when you're competing in SA. Yeah, if you go to race over the border,
you go on the
national rating. Yep. But then when you come back, you come back with a local rating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why not race in South Australia?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else that we need to look at, David?
No, I think that pretty much covers what we're trying to achieve with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to say to the participants? Just realise that David's doing this all manually, so he's going to be busy, so don't put him under the pump too much.
No. If anyone's got any queries at all on how the system works or what they're trying to work out what their rating of their horse is, just simply give us a call, and more than happy to run through it with them.
All right, there you go. There's David Thuen, the Racing's Operation Manager of Harness Racing SA. He shed a bit of light on the national rating system, and you've got to realise he was a pretty good driver as well. All right, that's it. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Jim. No worries.
There we go, David Thuen.